what was it like channeling kind of this stress, but also this mode of protection that he kind of gets into throughout the first part of the series?
Good question. It's tough, man. It's tough because the easiest thing to do when you're frustrated and things are not going your way is to lash out and be angry about certain things or be forceful about certain things. But that's not the Michael way of doing things, you know what I mean? So sometimes, like, Raps is like, that's not who he is, that's not who he is. And I'm like, bro, like, come on, man, I got to do something. And he's like, no, that's just not who he is. So just having to kind of strip back everything and just be very zen about things and be very patient and be, you know, yeah, just being very patient about everything. It kind of did that because it's easy to lash out and get, angry and, but it's like when he figures one thing out, something else is going wrong somewhere. So it's like him just trying to keep everything at a balance and trying to still maintain who he is, even though he's still changing slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly. But yeah.
He had more patience than I would have had because in some of the scenes with Taser and Sabrina, right, and I'm like, y'all are not listening at what's at stake.
Right?
Like he's trying to tell you all to look out, and y'all you're just not getting it. So he had more patience than I would have had personally. And Adelayo, for you, I think that I love how your character is kind of she's so supportive, but she's also is equally skeptical with everything he's saying and what's going on as she's supportive. And I love that about her. And for this series, I think that it's just really so different as anything we've seen so far. I think that it's different in terms of, the representation it provides for Black Londoners, Black British folks, but at the same time, like we haven't really seen a project like this for us in the US either. I think it's very groundbreaking in that aspect. So what do you hope that this series does as far as representation and what roles could look like for us in this supernatural space?
I mean, I think what Raps has done is really exciting. Like he's got five different characters, all in different walks of life, all developing these powers, and then you kind of get to follow each of these characters who are all from the same place but still lead very different lives. You kind of get to
Yeah.
follow them all, and I think it shows you that you can all be from the same place. You can all, you can have similarities, but actually we're all different. Like not that we're not a monolith. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
hopefully, what it does is, I mean, I think that it's a very entertaining show, and I hope that if people are entertained by it, what that will then do is encourage the people that are able to fund shows to say, well, yeah, let's give more people like Raps the funding to go off and write shows with an ensemble cast who's all black, or like let's just have more of these stories. Like, there's so many untapped stories that we can have. So I hope that it opens the door for that. I think that would be amazing.
So what can you tease about Sabrina's story arc this season, how she comes into her own?
Yeah, I like you said, it's her being in protective mode. Obviously, she has this younger sister, Charlene, who's played by Raja, and she is sort of like the mother figure to her sister. Her parents have moved back to Jamaica, they've retired, and she's left with this like sort of responsibility.
Hmm.
She comes into her own, into her power because of that reason. Her sister gets into like some sort of trouble, and she realizes that, okay, I need to not fear this power, but use it to my advantage. And
Yeah.
you can expect Sabrina to become an unformidable force. I feel like she is the one that is gonna outshine all these guys.
Period.
She's the one that's gonna end up being the protector, not just for her sister and her family, for them as well. I think. Like,
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And Josh and Calvin, for the both of you, I've seen you both in other projects, of course. Josh, Borders is one of my favorite series of the year. I love that show so much. And Calvin, I know you've been on a lot, but I think I actually saw you first in Mickey and the Bear a few years ago. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was
Yes,
actually
yes,
on
yes.
I was on the jury for South by the year that it
Yeah,
premiered. So that was one that's also a very underrated film
yeah.
as well. But the roles that you're in Supercell are very different from anything that either of you have done before. So what was it like being in a role where you kind of get to flex a muscle that you haven't really done in prior projects because it's just so like nothing we've seen before.
You know what? So yeah, I had shot Supercell first before Borders actually. So I
Wow.
did it a year or two prior to Borders, and I think with Supercell it was kind of like my first like lead role and big role. So I really just had the drive and passion to kind of really go head first, try and knock it out the park and really go into it. So I just wanted to dive into Taser's character so much and so deeply. And I took what I took away from it to go to Borders was I kind of had a bit more maturity behind the camera and around the camera. Watching Tosin helped me, know how to be number one on the call sheet, and also just I just felt more comfortable in front of the camera as well. And having tackled such a challenging character like Taser made playing Jaheim so much more easier in a way. I just knew more about myself and I knew my processes and all that. So yeah, that really aided my performance on Borders. But yeah, I really, really like this Supercell performance. It was such a learning curve for me and I really value it. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think for me, my process is like whenever I audition for a part, I look to the parts of me that resonate with the character I'm portraying, and I kind of think, why is it that I want to tell the story, or what attribute of mine do I bring to the table, or manipulate to serve the character and serve not more so the story, to be honest, at large. And yeah, that was my process for Mickey and the Bear, for instance, where I knew I was somewhat of I was almost a metaphor for escape, and I was someone who wasn't from the town of Anaconda, and all of a sudden I was thrust into this new space, and I was this jazz musician with aspirations to study and such, and then obviously for Cammy's character, as in Mickey, I kind of signified someone who had aspirations to leave a set place. So I just worked those elements in to that part of myself, and then obviously with Rodney, I identified that he was someone who was somewhat of a cheeky chappy guy, but underneath it all, he was going through something that meant he had to hide himself. He was masking his hurt when he felt abandoned from his family, and I just thought about, okay, if he's trying to tell a joke, or if he's trying to bring the mood up, what is the subtext of that, and then I just find my way in the scene with those things in mind.
How do you think this project kind of represents the work you've done previously, but also kind of like the work that you want to do now and are currently doing?
I think it's a great representation of my style of storytelling. Like if someone recommended to you, I want Rapman to do something, what's Rapman done? You could watch Supercell and you could be like, okay, yay or nay. But no matter what, you can make that decision, because if you look at my other stuff, there's bits of my other stuff in there. Like you can get a bit of the love story like you got in Cheryl's story, or a bit of the drama and the rivalry like you got in Blue's story. But then we've taken it to another level with this, where we've added the sci-fi touch. We've increased the production value, So I think it's a good representation of me, and I think it's a great representation of London, because honestly, take out the superpowers, that is literally London. If you want to tell somebody what's London like, tell them, especially as a black person in London, watch that show, because that's literally the black experience in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I don't want to reveal too much about the plot of what's going on in Supercell, but I do want to talk about a little bit about how it's so fascinating and interesting to me about how the superpowers within the show are connected to, things that Black people go through health-wise that aren't really connected. That aren't really treated the same in other communities, or aren't really impacted, other communities aren't impacted by certain things that Black people go through. So I think that I want to know, like, what was the decision like to kind of make this through line to these superpowers connected to something that may not, that Black people typically do not feel powerful by? If
That
that
was the
makes
main
sense.
reason. Something it's basically was turning a weakness into a strength, man. Like,
Hmm.
and that strength is raising their awareness with it. That strength is anybody who's suffering with something with the similar condition, with the same condition, can watch that and feel like finally people are gonna understand what I'm going through. And
Hmm.
imagine if, yeah, something that made me puts me down, but will make my children extraordinary. Like, imagine what that would be like. So it was just something to make them feel seen, something to make them feel strong, and something to raise awareness, because so many people have never heard of it. So many people have
Yeah.
never seen it. And I think it's such a great thing that the power comes from something. Because it is crazy having a superpower from it as it is crazy having something that only affects someone with dark skin. You know,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
seem as much as any crazier. So it just
Right.
made it feel even realer, man. You know, and obviously I know people that suffered from it, and it just was just a no-brainer, honestly. Like, I don't like ever doing anything for nothing's sake. Something's got to mean something. It's got to come from somewhere. And if there's gonna be a power that only affects people of a certain race, it has to be for a reason. And this was a no-brainer. This whole thing was like, okay, well, if you're gonna give us that to bring it down, I'm gonna flip on its head and make it be something that's a strength. And yeah, that's what I wanted to show from it.